Images of Paddock in the room, dead,
Yep.
are circulating within 24 hours of the killing, and people are wondering how did those get out. It's suspected that Levi Hancock leaked them to a girlfriend.
Not to his girlfriend at the time.
Okay.
He would have leaked it to a possible previous girlfriend, or I won't get into.
So you call up on one of the talk shows that Lombardo was on and ask him, and he claims we did a full investigation into the leaked photos, and we were not able to identify how they were leaked, so therefore there was no discipline with anyone. Then he said specifically, what about Levi Hancock? And he said, we specifically investigated Levi Hancock, and he's been cleared. Yeah. Okay, so what do you want to say about that?
Well, I find the way he said that odd to begin with. And I did a two-part question, but I didn't let him know the second part of the question first. I wanted to just ask the first part of the question. He did promise us that he would give us the results of the investigation, and of course he comes back, we did a comprehensive investigation, blah, just like you said. And then next question out of my mouth is, okay, there's been some rumors about Levi Hancock leaking these images to Jackie Heinrich of Boston 25, blah, blah, blah. What do you have to say about that? And of course he says, well, we heard that too, and he can stand there and say that Levi Hancock was not the person who did it. So in his mind, he's eliminated an officer that didn't do it, but he can't figure out which officer did do it, which is obviously BS, because I can go in there in 15 minutes and I can tell you exactly who did it. So whatever this crackpot team of investigators that they had that went into the leaked images and could not figure out where they came from, when we have those images being dispersed amongst the officers within an hour after they breached the room, these officers are seeing that. So I get this time frame. Now let me walk you through this, because this is information that's never been revealed before, never been released. Part of this is opinion, part of this is fact. So I'm going to walk you through this. At the time that the second room was breached, obviously Officer O'Donnell negligently discharged his weapon. At that moment in time, Officer O'Donnell should have been removed. He should not have stayed on the scene. That's standard protocol. And what you do is, if you have a negligent discharge, that OIS gets involved, which is why we have a fit report, which I call something else that rhymes with fit. So we have the fit report, and the whole reason for that is because we have a negligent discharge of a weapon. So now it's an officer-involved shooting, okay, which obviously wouldn't have been the case. It would have stayed homicide. Okay, so everybody's wondering, well, why did it go that way? Well, there's your reason, because this officer fired a weapon. So he fired a weapon, then you have a sheriff saying, we engaged the suspect. So now you have all this stuff up in the air. So fast forward a little bit. So now you've got O'Donnell, should have been pulled at that immediate time, but he wasn't. He stayed there. Matchko, after a few minutes, is given the actual, Officer Matchko is given the job of guarding that crime scene, and also go through everything you can do to find phones, any written information, anything that would tell us where these other shooters are, because they're getting calls that there's other shooters at, Tropicana, they're getting New York, and so forth. So Officer Matchko is now running around this room, basically destroying any evidence that would be preserved. He's moving things around. He's lifting things up. He's looking for phones. He's looking for whatever. He sees wires going into bags. He actually says in his statement that we did release his statement. In his statement, he says he sees wires going into the bags. He's calling for a canine to come up to actually sniff the room, because he's thinking that might be a bomb. He doesn't know. So he's scared about a bomb, trying to find phones. He finds some phones. And then eventually they pull Paddock, and they actually lift Paddock up. One of my original videos, actually, I got a lot of controversy about this, was I stated that Paddock was moved. Okay? So if Paddock was laying on the ground, there was no blood down the side of his face when they first go in there. And you can see the pictures when Bitsko's camera or whatever. But then all of a sudden there's blood when we see the pictures later. So now there's two pools of blood, two completely different colors, which tells me they came out at two different times. The only way that happens is if he was moved. And in the case of the blood on the chest as well, he possibly was lifted up, or that blood came out of his mouth when he fired the final shot. Who knows? A lot of ground covered there. Fast forward again with O'Donnell. You've got Levi Hancock in the room, Officer O'Donnell in the room, and they leave the room. Matchko's in charge. Where did they go? So Hancock and O'Donnell leave together. Now, this is in O'Donnell's statement previous to this as to what happened, but he doesn't really go into what him and Levi did. Here's my guess. Levi Hancock, Officer O'Donnell walk away. Levi makes a phone call to his ex girlfriend.
Who was a reporter?
Who was a reporter, who actually was originally a reporter in Las Vegas and moved to Boston. Now, what are the odds that a reporter from Las Vegas moves to Boston, and this same reporter that used to live in Las Vegas, who used to allegedly date or whatever with this particular officer, moves to Boston and somehow gets these images, the same images that were leaked within a specific time frame very soon right after the shooting? So which two officers had access to that room? Matchko was in that room, and then all of a sudden we hear this. Levi, according to Matchko, came back with Officer O'Donnell to the room, to the crime scene. Why were they coming back to the crime scene? You don't go back to crime scenes. You leave. Matchko's in charge. Matchko looks up and sees Levi Hancock and O'Donnell and asks Hancock, "What are you doing?" "Oh, I'm coming back to take some pictures." He actually says in the statement that he's taking pictures. Matchko looks at Levi while he's taking pictures. What is he taking pictures with? He doesn't have a camera. So he obviously has his phone. So he took pictures with his phone. So as he takes pictures with his phone, Matchko asks him what's he doing, and he says, "I'm taking pictures for the boss."
Is this in the body cam video?
No.
Oh,
no.
How are you? This is in a report.
Yeah, this is
okay.
This is in.
He said, Hancock came in and started taking pictures with his cell phone, and I asked him, "What are you doing?"
I'm gathering all this information from the officer statements that we've obtained exclusively. We obtained these documents. They were not released, and they were court ordered to release. So we got these documents, and I'm piecing this together based on their statements.
So we know that Hancock took pictures with his phone in the room, and we know that this woman in Boston who he used to date got the pictures because she did what with them? She released them?
Well, my thought is this, is that Hancock, and now this is my opinion, but it's based on me piecing this story together to make it fit. Hancock and O'Donnell walk away. O'Donnell shouldn't have been with him to begin with, but they do walk away. During that time, they make an initial phone call to this reporter telling her, "Hey, guess what? Blah, blah, blah. This is what's going down," and he's giving her this information, maybe an exclusive or something like that for whatever reason. We don't know. That part we don't know. So then the two come back, and he starts taking pictures. Well, kind of makes sense to me that if they called her, possibly, we don't have the records of it, that maybe she told him to go back and get her something.
But how do we know that she got the pictures? Did she release them?
Yeah, she was the first person to release them.
Okay.
Yeah. So Boston 25 gets these leaked images. She's the first to release these images. She gets the exclusive, and the images have a lot of information in them. The problem is that I don't have the original images, but I had enough information in these images to determine what camera took the pictures. I didn't have the EXIF data, but I did have enough data to determine that the pictures were taken with an iPhone, namely an iPhone 6, that I believe. So it was my quest at that moment, which I never revealed to the public back at the time, to find out which phone this guy has. Come to find out, I get a lot of information, and people come to me with some information and volunteered information. Well, not going to reveal the sources, but
drum roll. He had an iPhone 6.
I had an iPhone 6. Okay, great. So now we know. Okay, that narrows it down. Now, how many officers were up in that room that had iPhone 6s, or we'll just say iPhone? Okay.
Well, look, it was clearly Levi Hancock who took these pictures and linked them to this girlfriend. My question is, okay, at the end of the day, what's the big so what about this?
We talked about cover-ups. We're in the cover-up phase right now.
Okay.
So obviously, if Sheriff Lombardo, who lied to me directly on when I did an interview, or not an interview, I did a call into a radio show he was doing, and I asked him directly, and he, in my opinion, directly lied to me.
He doesn't like to acknowledge any fault by anyone at the Las Vegas Police Department. That seems to be his MO.
Yep, seems
right?
to be his MO.
And that would be the explanation as to why he didn't, acknowledge that, one of our officers acted inappropriately, and he's being disciplined or whatever, because we don't do anything wrong. Same reason why his knee-jerk reaction is to protect Hendricks, when it's just so absurd for anybody to defend Hendricks' conduct. That
how could you defend that?
But that's what Lombardo did.
And I've got a lot of really heavy opinions on Hendricks and obviously Hancock. And the situation is this: didn't he run on some sort of campaign promise of transparency? How transparent do you think this whole investigation actually was? I'm not buying it. I'm not buying a lot of things. It doesn't make me.
So that's. Yeah. I just want to make sure I understood what the import was of that whole issue. That shows more police corruption. We're not saying that. Oh, those photos seem to show something that the other photos don't show. There's nothing like that with the photos.
No, there's not that. But there is this. When Matchko asked him who you're taking the photos for, he said the boss, our boss. Well, Matchko was the one taking the photos in there to verify Paddock was whoever. But at the same time, guess what? Matchko's boss, Levi Hancock's boss, is the same boss. But maybe at that moment in time, Levi's boss was actually in Boston, and Levi's boss was actually probably Jackie.
Yeah. Or Lombardo did ask him to take pictures, and that's why Lombardo was in part covering that up. I don't know. Let me ask you about the moving of the body. Is that significant? Is that sinister? Well, why was the body moved?
Well,
didn't somebody say that they were checking to see if there's any explosives on him or something like that?
They were checking this. They were actually checking him to see if there's any cell phones on him and if he was in communication with anyone that could be a possible another shooter.
Yeah, because the important thing for everybody to know is that the first thing you're doing is you're concerned about other people being killed. You still have an active shooter situation, even though the guy's lying there with blood.
Absolutely.
Then you worry about the investigation second. Right?
Absolutely.
So as far as it being a crime scene that you don't mess with, well, you actually do mess with a crime scene as long as you think people are in danger.
Absolutely. And I'm in agreement with that, but there's a certain point where as you're walking around a room, if you have a suspect lying on the floor, obviously dead, then the movement...
That's one guy, but we don't know about other guys.
Yeah, but the movement of weapons, the movement of other items that might have some true evidentiary value and not necessarily any value to you trying to figure out if there's another shooter, there's a lot of things moved. And I don't know exactly what was moved or how far it was moved and all these different things. All I know is that there was a lot that was apparently moved. I can visualize Matchko running through that room scared to death, thinking that one, he's under the gun to go find, something that's going to point him to another shooter. He's looking at suitcases that have wires hanging out of them, and who knows if the wires go to a bomb or if they go to a sexual device or whatever else was in these things. And all of these various questions that come to mind. So that's the mind of Matchko. Yeah.
And everybody was on edge. I mean, hence the reason why there was an accidental discharge. Mm-hmm. I mean, this is a pretty freaky situation that you're walking into, and you don't know what you're...
Accidental discharge, and then the officer is still there. O'Donnell is still on duty for the rest of the night. That doesn't happen. I don't know. And once you accidentally discharge a weapon, your buddies don't want you there. They like, dude, you need to go talk to whatever officer they talk to.
You don't just say, hey, I thought I saw something and shot at it.
I saw a putty cat. No, I don't think he saw a putty cat in there. I mean, that's room 134. That's another mystery. Here's the big takeaway from all of this. If this show leaves anyone watching this with one thought, we were told by a judge, Judge Scotty, that the lawsuit that was brought forth by RJ, the Review Journal, and subsequently was brought on by several other news organizations, that we were going to receive all of the information, the data, the body-worn camera footage, statements, whatever it is that they had, we're supposed to get.
Nevada Supreme Court ultimately ruled you got to release everything.
Absolutely.
And then police start releasing things in little dribs and drabs after that.
Yep. And so they did that over a period of time, knowing that, okay, well, if we do this, the public interest will wane, which obviously it did.
And the election will happen. Because there's a few things dribbled out before the election, and then they started dumping more stuff after the election.
Correct. So you have that. And then you have, I think it was a 6-month time frame. You bypass that, and we're still getting information. We're still getting, not now, I mean, back at the 6-month mark, they're still, every Wednesday, they're doing their data dumps, and we're going to pick it up, 34th, 35th data dump, and then they say they're done. Then we're like, hey, wait a minute, what about? And then all of a sudden we get, here's another little, oh yeah, you're right, we forgot about these. Here's another data dump. Okay. And then the rest, here we are doing FOIAs, Freedom of Information Act requests to get more information. Why are we doing this? Why do we have to do a FOIA request to get information that the Supreme Court of Nevada ordered you to give us? So now you are making us jump through all these hoops to get this information. Key thing is, which information are we getting on these FOIA requests? Well, the O'Donnell statement. is a prime example. The Newton statement is a prime example. So if you go look at those two statements, they're pretty important statements.
Those took independent FOIA requests after the Supreme Court ruling.
Yep. And there is a team of people that are behind the scenes here that are doing an incredible amount of work in Las Vegas, that are diligently going after these requests, getting this information. I'm not going to sit here and take credit for all of this. This is a team effort. This is a lot of people getting together saying, look, our common core goal here is to get as much information out to the public as possible. You're doing a wonderful job by allowing me to sit here and do this right now. Okay, and I appreciate that. I absolutely do. I couldn't ask for a better way to get this out. But at the same time, you've got people working behind the scenes tirelessly that don't necessarily want their names out there or all these different things, but they are behind the scenes doing this stuff, and they deserve the credit that's deserved to them. But they also deserve the same satisfaction that the victims' families and that the survivors deserve, which is some form of closure and some form of accountability when it comes to the LVMPD, who obviously has failed at doing this. Now I'm going to look at you, and I'm going to ask you a question again. We're going to flip this thing around. Is it, in your opinion, that based on the information I've given you here today, that the Las Vegas Metropolitan Police Department is in contempt?
Absolutely. If you're talking those statements that you're talking about, absolutely should have been revealed, and they should have been released within a week of the Nevada Supreme Court ruling. I don't even get the whole 6-month, weekly dribs and drabs.
Well, their excuse to that was because it was so much information that the amount of work necessary to go in and redact some of the names, which I understand the redaction process is a pain in the ass. I've got 14,000 documents that's going to be coming out in 5 years or something after they redact it all, and that's with the help of another person as well. That's their FOIA request. That's 28 CDs of information we're supposed to get, but we have to wait for it.
Yeah, I think there probably would be a question of whether it was intentional or not. I think if they could demonstrate that this was negligence and not intent. If you're going to get contempt of court for violating that order, you'd have to show intent.
Have to show intent, and then you have to show. And the part about the intent is, and I'll ask you again, based on what you've heard me say here today, is it of your opinion, or possibly of your opinion, that they picked specific things to hold back based on the information that's inside them that would reveal some internal investigations that had gone awry, Hendricks and Levi Hancock?
Right. Yeah, that would seem to demonstrate the intent, because how is it that it was just these items?
Right.
Especially considering how significant those. These are statements by guys that were some of the first ones in the room.
Yeah.
So someone could bring that action. Review Journal could do it,
or
someone else.
Someone else.
He's a little crazy.
Mm-hmm.
That would be a very, very interesting motion.
The main thing is we need to get this information back in front of either the original judge, because remember it was switched off to another judge, and she went and hit her son. Well, all this other stuff happened. So it's been bounced around a little bit, but we have a situation that went to the Supreme Court of Nevada. Okay. The Supreme Court ruled that we were supposed to get this information within a certain time frame. Now, the problem is that there is no intent that really has to be ruled here. Okay? Here's the reason. We didn't ask for specific information, and they didn't give it to us. We asked for all of it. So if you have all of it, give it up. If I have a book that has 500 pages in it, and you ask for the book, and I give you 460 pages of it, when I had the book, just give it up.
But they might be in contempt regardless for failure to do it. I think the question is, what is the sanction going to be? If they can show that it was negligence, then I think they're going to get a slap on the wrist. If they can show that they intentionally held this stuff back.
Right. But either way, the situation is this. We're having to we're jumping through hoops now to get the little tidbits and morsels that we're getting. The time, if we would have had a lot of this information earlier, now here's the big question. If we would have had a lot of this information earlier, before mediation started the process, some of the information that I've actually given to you today that otherwise wasn't known back then, would it change part of that mediation? Would they have more ammunition to go in there with to get more money for the victims? Now, if you think about that for a minute, if Sheriff Lombardo, by his inaction and by the fact that he, whether or not he's in contempt or not, by him leading the sheriff's department and knowing that he's under a court order, the Supreme, not just some court order, a Supreme Court order, to telling him to give us all of the information that we're supposed to get, and he doesn't give that information, then doesn't that tell you that maybe by him trickling out and picking and choosing which information goes out when, that he can push some of the information beyond the time of the mediation? That way those money amounts are reduced, and by, I don't know, order of $250 million or $50 million, maybe $100, maybe $1, doesn't make any difference. The amount, the fact is that by him pushing that data coming out of there beyond the mediation time, which we are obviously in that time frame basically now, then that affects the outcome. That affects the mediation.
That's a theory. My theory is he's about protecting the police more than he's about protecting MGM. He certainly has proven that.
Yeah.
Okay, so another thing you wanted to talk about was the glass, and you brought glass with you as you did the last time. First thing I wanted to ask about the glass, because Michael and I were talking about this, he first drilled out the glass. Is that correct? Is that what we believe? Or he cut the glass? No?
No. He had a hammer with him, and he hammered out the glass. Now, whether or not he hammered out the internal, the glass is in panes like this.
Is that bulletproof glass, by the way?
Absolutely not.
Not, okay.
Not at all. It's not laminated or anything. And there was videos that came out in the beginning, and still to this day, people believe that these are like the term hurricane windows or security windows.
Are they double pane?
Well, it's illegal to do that. You can't have those type of windows because the fire department has to be able to get inside. Okay, and people have to get out if necessary. So you can't have people standing there, and I don't want to create a picture for people, but if the building's on fire, you either need to get out or create.
So you're saying glass in a building like that needs to be breakable?
Absolutely.
It can't. I mean, there's probably no such thing as unbreakable glass. But
there is unbreakable glass, but there's different levels of how the glass works. Obviously, in the old days, it was just the thickness of the glass that was determined, but it was all plate glass. Plate glass is glass that's formed over like liquid, and so the glass is poured over the top, and then it forms that way. Tempered glass is glass that is heat treated over from like a bending or a torching issue. So what happens is the glass, when you break tempered glass, it breaks into hundreds and thousands of tiny little pieces. That's the glass when you're driving down the road, your passenger and your driver's side windows, your roll-up windows, that's tempered glass.
Shower doors, I know that because it shattered all over my bathtub.
There you go. And you saw how many pieces were laying there on the floor when that happened, and they all look just like that right there. So that glass that makes that. Now the glass that's on your windshield, that is different. That is laminated glass. That glass you can stand there and you hammer and bolt, you sledgehammer, whatever you want to do, you can shoot through it, and it's not going to shatter. The reason being is if you're driving down the road and a rock flies up from a car in front of you and hits your glass, you don't want thousands of pieces of glass coming into your car. So that's why they switched to that type of glass. So it's three main types of glass. You got your plate glass, you got your tempered glass, and then you have your safety or laminated glass. Now, that a lot of people thought it was safety and laminated glass on the windows up there because they saw the gold film and they thought, well, maybe that's the laminate, and that's it. But that's not the case. The gold film, which you can see here, is micro thin.
Okay, so it was tempered glass.
Tempered glass, yep.
And by the way, no alarm on it. Are you aware of the glass ever being alarmed so that if
they would never put it would be cost prohibitive. Think of the number of glass panels on they're called lights. The panels are called lights. The number of lights that are or panels that are on that building. Now that's called a cascade or something, or a waterfall type cascade is how they call that glass, because it's all like one sheet coming down. It looks like, but it's multiple sheets. They're not going to put individual sensors on that. So how do you come across that to censor that? You put what's called a volumetric pressure sensor or a barometric pressure sensor. That pressure sensor would actually determine a quick change in the barometric pressure inside the building because someone busts out a window. Now, everybody remembers when they were standing at the top of the stairwell inside waiting to breach the room, you could hear the wind going by. Well, I've been in that stairwell many times. I never heard wind. The reason why I didn't hear wind is because there was nowhere for the wind to go. There was no broken windows. So anyone that says that the windows were not broken before the breach, all you got to do is listen to the audio of the sound of the wind coming through that hallway when the officers are standing there.
So you
waiting.
could theoretically have some alarm that's associated with barometric pressure, which would indicate that somebody broke this window, and then an alarm would go off in the hotel.
Yep.
Are you aware of any hotels that have implemented that?
No. I'm not aware of Mandalay Bay having that at all.
So he hammered the glass. One thing Michael and I were just questioning, why didn't he just shoot through the glass?
Well, would you?
I would be concerned it's going to ricochet.
Would
right?
you? No,
but I'm not a ballistics expert. But
well, yeah, technically, I guess I wouldn't be either. But I'm borderline.
But you would say yes. There's a risk of that bullet ricocheting.
Well, keep in mind, not necessarily the ricochet, but yes. But also, I don't know whether Paddock knew, or whoever the shooter was, knew that shooting out that window would cause the glass to go out or come in. Because the wind pressure, the wind outside, which direction was it going? It was obviously going north, east, or south, or whatever. But so it was going away. But he wouldn't have known this. But at the same time, most hotels, almost every hotel, is positively pressured. It's positively pressured to keep bad smells out and to keep the guests cool and so forth.
So you believe that he broke both windows with a hammer first and then shot out of them?
Right. And I think when the glass fell, the reason why people don't see a boatload of glass inside is because the hotel is positively pressured. Therefore, the moment you break the outside pane, whether he broke through both panes at once or one pane at a time, that glass, the last pane, which is the pane with the gold on it, that pane would have busted to the outside because of the positive pressure inside the room. So obviously, some of the glass would have fell inside.
Okay, so what do we want to say today about the glass?
Nothing. No.
All that buildup.
Well, we gotta go. The main thing about the glass is that to answer people's questions, there's so many lingering questions about when the glass was broken. Okay, whether or not Stephen Paddock could do it. Now, what I was going to do is bring some glass over, and we can still do this, and we can actually break the glass together. Just to show you how easy it actually is. It's not difficult to break this glass. I've broken hundreds of panes of this type or similar types of glass just to get a feel for what it would take to do it. Now, whether or not he practiced breaking glass, I seriously don't know.
That reminded me of a question because Campos said that he heard drilling. Was there drilling, or that was just him hearing the shots?
Well, there's drilling, but was he drilling into that L bracket? Was he drilling something to some sort of support to hold the wires up that were going between the two rooms so that they weren't,
Was a drill found?
Oh yeah, there's drills found. If you remember, one of the officers during the 60 Minutes interview, he actually says, "Yeah, there was drills, and we found lots of tools and drills." And his facial expressions was quite animated. And there was lots of bits. Lots of bits, and it was
a vibrator.
Yeah, there was one of those found. I don't know who that was for. If he knew Mary Lou Danley was not going to be there with him, maybe, I don't know what guys. I mean, I could guess, but I'm not going to go there. We'll leave that one.
So you think that he took a hammer or to both windows? Okay.
Yeah, and the reason why I say that is because if you look at the pattern now, there's another person that actually brought this to my attention. He goes by the name of 10 online, and when he and I talked back in the very beginning of this discussion, 10 and I, and he was telling me, because he used to hang glass, and so he was giving me some insight onto how the glass is put into the window frame, and what's between the panes and the thickness of the glass. He knew all of this information and had no idea I actually had glass. So he was watching a video that I was in, and I was showing people the glass, and he went, "Holy crap, someone actually has glass," because no one ever really talked about it. But I actually have the glass from the room. People are wondering, how in the hell did you get it? Well, that's another story. I think we already covered that.
So, this was found in, some of it's gold and some of it's clear, right?
Yep, and there's one piece of glass in there that's going to answer the question. If you look at the largest piece of glass in your center front there, you're going to see something in it. That one right there. Now, what happens is you'll see the gold has been rubbed off because we did an extensive test on it, but you'll see some gold that's still on it, and we'll give you some close-ups. I actually have a portable microscope here if you want to use it too. But that glass there, if you look at it very carefully, shows some very shows concentric rings. Now, look for an impact point. You having not much knowledge of glass and impact points, where would you think that glass was hit?
This particular piece, where was it hit? Well, you would think that it was hit at the part that's broken.
Mm-hmm. Well, if you look at it, you'll see there's a certain point that actually shows some concentric rings. And whether or not that glass is actually a piece of glass that was hit by the hammer, I cannot sit here and tell you. But it's based on my opinion and the opinion of a few other people that have seen it. No one has said no.
Now tell me again, why is some of it gold and some of it's not gold?
There's two panes of glass on that they use. The glass is made by a company called Viricon. Viricon is up in Canada. It's the parent company. The glass was actually put into Mandalay Bay by another company called Sierra Glass. They're out of business. But the glass is two panes. You have 1/4 inch piece of glass that is your interior. When you walk up to the glass inside Mandalay Bay, your interior frame is going to be clear. Then you're going to have a 1/2 inch of dead airspace. That dead airspace is generally filled with argon. Argon is the third most abundant one of the noble gases in the atmosphere. So you have nitrogen, oxygen, argon is your next one. So then you have argon put in the middle. Then you have the back part of the next piece of glass, which is the same as the first, but it has a laminate film put on it. Not laminate, I'm sorry, take that word back. It's actually a film, a 24 karat gold film not film, I keep saying the word film, but it's deposited on the glass to give it that look. But it also makes the glass break a little different. If everybody remembers seeing the glass that was in the rooms, you saw one part of the glass, and if you look right there at that glass, you'll notice the gold pieces are slightly elongated or larger than your corresponding clear pieces of glass. And clear pieces of glass were much more abundant for me to get because the gold pieces were larger and fell more directly in front of the building, except that one. That one piece of glass is the only piece of glass that I found that was 9 or 10 feet out further from every other piece of glass I found. Now, at the time, I didn't think much of it. I didn't think much of it at all. And then I started thinking, wait a second, how in the world did this one piece of glass get to be that much further out? Did someone pick it up and drop it? Did the wind come by? But it's larger than all the other pieces of glass.
You really have a lot of time on your hands, I gotta say.
A little bit. It's almost like the Matrix. It's like, because I wanted to keep all this investigation internal to myself and only involve a very few select people outside to get involved with it, because I didn't want leaks. I'm not like Sheriff Lombardo, who allows leaks to happen. I didn't want that to happen. But that one piece of glass, I calculated, and now this is going to be stupid. This is really funny. I actually used a video software program.
The audience is riveted on the edge of their seat because I want to know how this piece of glass wound up where it did.
Piece of glass. So that one piece of glass, either A, it was large enough to where it caught more of the wind, and the wind was able to pull it further away. Okay, and I found out, no, that's not the answer. Or B, it was actually hit. So I started paying more attention to that piece of glass that you're holding in your hand right now. And as I paid more attention to it, I started looking at it closer and closer. So I put it underneath a microscope, which I have the microscope with me if you guys want to film some B-roll later. And I looked at it, and then I sent those images off to glass experts. I did not tell them what the glass was or where it was from. I asked them point blank, was this glass shot? Was this glass hit? And from which direction was it hit? If it was hit. Or was this an impact after the fact, after the glass was broken out? Could this piece of glass have that type of hit had been caused by it hitting something, say a blunt object on the ground? Okay. About 80% of my responses came back. That piece of glass was hit by a blunt object, most likely a ball-peen hammer of some sort. Okay, of some sort. And
how many experts did you send this thing to?
I sent it to 3 known experts, and then of course you have your YouTube crowd of experts and your Facebook crowd of experts that all looked at it as well. A couple of them did, but I wanted to keep it within the realm of reason. And then of course my own thing, just staring at it for going on almost 2 years now, and trying to figure out. I try to debunk myself. I look at something that I put out there and I go, okay, I'm going to put this out. Someone's going to try to debunk me, and let me debunk myself before someone else gets that opportunity. I couldn't debunk that. The only thing that actually started, coming out that made sense was that piece of glass was actually struck, and it went out.
So he would have had to first break the first pane and then break the gold pane?
Not necessarily.
You think he could have?
I've been able to duplicate both. Yeah,
okay.
I've been able to duplicate both. Now I've been able to, and actually I have the pane of glass still that I've only broke the interior pane, and it's still sitting there, all cracked with it's ridiculously looking as far as just the number of cracks that go through it. And then you come around the other side, and it's perfectly, no problem at all. You hear a slight suction sound or whatever whenever you hit it, because that argon section in the middle is a little bit different pressurization.
Now, why does my shower door shatter? The entire door came down, as opposed to these windows that kind of the entire window didn't shatter.
The entire window did shatter. The clear window.
Oh, the clear window did.
Clear window.
Okay.
Now, the only thing holding the exterior pane together that created those larger shards of glass. Everybody remembers looking through and you saw that larger shard of glass. Well, that extra deposit of film on the not film. I keep saying the word film, but it's the extra deposit of 24 karat
causes
gold.
It not to
causes
shatter.
it not to shatter the same way as the other ones, as you can see right there.
Okay, we're talking way more about glass than I ever thought I would, but
we could do a whole episode
believe
on
it or
glass.
not, I've got another question about the glass.
Oh my!
And then we're moving on.
I feel a two-part episode coming on.
Yes, a two-part glass episode. If you're saying that the outside pane didn't shatter because of the gold coating,
well, it did, but just didn't shatter into the
shards.
smaller pieces. Yeah, correct.
Wouldn't a lot of the inside pane then have wound up in the room because? Yes?
Yep.
Okay. I thought you were saying, though, that people were surprised that they found very little glass inside.
They didn't find as much as they thought they would, but yes,
But they found a lot of glass.
Logic would dictate that if you break two panes of glass, one interior, one exterior, but as you hit it, you have several forces going into play. One, tempered glass is glass under pressure. The glass is constantly under pressure, so if you just tap it, if anyone's ever moved, or you said you broke your shower door, right?
Yeah.
You were probably amazed at what caused it to break. Probably something real simple, nothing major went through it. You probably just a tap in the wrong location.
Right.
That's how tempered glass works. If you're a tempered glass installer, anyone watching this knows anything about tempered glass, if you move it and just lay it down on concrete the wrong way and just tap it, it will explode in your hands. And I've had this happen many times. So that's meant to do that because the glass is under pressure all the way throughout the glass. That's why it breaks into so many different shards. Now, the glass that has the emulsion on it, which is actually, I guess, the better term.
Emulsion. You came up with the right word.
You give me a
we'll
few
go
minutes,
back and,
I'll come up
we'll
with
go back and edit that back in.
Yeah,
it's not film, emulsion.
Yeah, you'll see my mouth move, and, and then you'll emulsion. But you have that, and so that emulsion that's on the outside of the glass is apparently enough to cause it to break at different sizes.
Okay, thank you, Mike. Wow, that was more than I needed to know about glass. Autopsies.
Okay, that's gonna be another episode. On this subject, I'm going to bring in some information that I have, because a lot of the information I've given you is basically either factual or it's evidence that I have direct knowledge of. I stumbled across the autopsy information that I'm about to give to you in several different ways. One of which, in the very beginning of the investigation, I was asked now I have to slow down. I got to be very careful how I word this. I was asked to get information that would assist on knowing about the drugs that he took, when he took them, were they abused. Can I interview people that would let me know if they could tell if he was under the influence of one or the other, whether it be the anxiety medication, without saying the actual name of the medication, or influence of alcohol, or both? Or would they be able to determine it? Or did people think that he had a dependency problem? These are questions that were brought on early on.
Somebody was thinking about suing some doctors.
Yeah. I'm thinking about suing the entire pharmaceutical community.
Well, you're not the first.
Yeah.
Stand in line.
Yeah. So there's some old friends of mine I'd like to bring back into the current fold that have done that before. But there might be a problem there, and that brings up the possibility of autism and all the other things we discussed earlier. Does it have a role? Does the drugs interact with alcohol interacting with that? Does it create a bigger issue for people that are autistic? Whole other realm to get into. But as far as the autopsy is concerned, we'll go into it this way. How many sets of autopsies do you think were done?
One or two.
One or two sets of autopsies, okay. If you're an accountant and you're kind of a crooked accountant and you're cooking the books, you have two sets of books, right? Okay, so when we were given the autopsies, when those autopsies reports came out on all 58 of the victims, not obviously the Paddock autopsy, which is a whole episode of its own. So you have 58 autopsies that were given to us. How many pages were in the autopsy? Each one. Very few. Okay. Granted, we didn't get the benefit of seeing all of the pictures and stuff like this, and I get that part. I get it. But your average autopsy is going to be somewhere maybe 40 to 80 pages in that range, not 5 or 10 or 13, or much like the BAU report, 2.5 pages. So we have that issue to look at. Now, an autopsy performed in 20 minutes would be really amazing. So there's question about that. So when you look at the autopsy and look at the time the autopsy starts, autopsy ends, you can't do an autopsy in 20 minutes. There's several autopsies that have some time issues. So that's another thing we have to look at and go, okay, why are the autopsies only taking this amount of time?
Sorry, you're referring to the victims?
I'm referring to the victims. So you have this. So are there two sets of autopsies that were done? One that says 20 minutes, and then they do a separate autopsy for the internal exam, which I've never seen before. Autopsies are autopsies. So you have the external exam, which probably would take about 20 minutes, maybe a little bit longer, because they're going over the skin with magnifying glasses, so to speak, looking for puncture holes or looking for needle marks or looking for residue. They're looking for anything that would be on these victims. But the problem is that they had some sort of bias thinking that, okay, well, they were all part of this, shooting. But the thing is you do this on every single murder case, period. You absolutely go through the whole process. And then you do the internal exam. The internal exam is you take the organs out, you weigh them, you do the toxicology, you do all these different things, and you look for the reason of actual death. Was it caused by a bullet, or was it caused by the person being trampled?
Isn't that all part of the autopsy?
You would think. You would think.
But you're saying it was not done. The autopsy was only 20 minutes.
Some of the autopsies were such of a short length that the question would naturally arise to anyone that's familiar with looking at autopsies that there's a problem here. There's a huge problem. And why is there a problem? Why would you bring in these pathologists from other locations way outside the state, from Florida, Michigan, and so forth? You bring in at least 3 to help you on these autopsies. You have 58 bodies that you have to autopsy over a period of the next day or 2 or 3. You have to do it relatively soon. It's not going to be a month-long process. So you do these autopsies. So they bring in these 3 pathologists from various locations. Why these 3? Why not just bring them in from an adjacent county or somewhere nearby? Why would they do that?
What's the answer?
We're going to find out. Part of it, we have some good clues as to what may be going on. But the other issue is this. Is it possible?
Who does the autopsy done by? Is that a county coroner?
Done by the coroner. And,
county coroner.
Yeah, Fudenberg is the guy's name. And I've got to know.
And it was the county coroner that supposedly brought in these others?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Pathologists? Yeah. And how many pathologists work for the county coroner?
I think there's 4 or 5 or so. Maybe 3 to 5.
And the 58 autopsy reports were done by how many different pathologists?
5 or 6. So you have the 3 that were brought in. You have the existing your existing crew that's there, so to speak, and then you have the issue of so they went through these autopsies relatively quickly. Some of the autopsies we're being told did not have internal exams. Why would someone do that? Why would you not have an internal exam on a murder victim? Okay, you pretty much there's pretty much the rule of it is that you do a thorough exam on, especially when it comes to a case this important. This is the largest mass shooting in U.S. history. Someone in a case like he was shooting for 10 minutes. So if you're in the crowd and you see your ex-wife and you don't want to pay alimony anymore and you got a gun on you, there's a crime of opportunity. I'm not saying that happened. I mean, in no way alluding to that. But that's a real distinct possibility. So you have to do the ballistics, which we don't have. And we don't have the autopsies done properly, which we don't have. This is weird. This is never in history had anything close to this. So we don't have the autopsies that seem to be done properly. And we also don't have the ballistics.
I keep hearing people talking about the ballistics. Who was doing the ballistics?
The FBI.
So the FBI has it. They just haven't released it.
I don't know. I mean,
you don't know whether they did it?
Oh, I know. I know they did it, but I don't know well, I kind of got a good idea, but where is it?
Good idea as to
Well,
why they haven't released it.
Let's just put it this. Let's rather than getting into my personal knowledge into this, which I will reveal at a later date. Let's get into the fact that they are charged with they took the lead on the evidence. Okay, to take some of the so the LVMPD could handle their local jobs, their daily jobs of, hey, we still got a city that we have to protect. I get that. So the FBI comes in, and it's not necessarily a federal situation here because it wasn't a terrorist act. So that's why we didn't get the Sandy Hook, style report that we're used to seeing. We got this 2.5 page BAU / let's hire some outside people and let's throw 10 things on a piece of paper.
Although ISIS claimed responsibility, and in that BAU, they basically put in the conclusion that it wasn't terrorism. So is it only a terrorist investigation if it turned out to be terrorism?
That's what's so weird about this whole thing. I mean, they can rule things out. It's just like Sheriff Lombardo can rule out Levi Hancock did not, whatever, but he can't. Okay, so we've got one removed. Now we got how many more officers were in there to go by? So back to the autopsy thing here. We've got 58 autopsies that were performed. Supposedly, because the information is still gray, hence that. The information is still gray, and we're still trying to figure out, okay, well, how many actual internal exams were done? You have some of these wounds that were questioned. Some people believe that, in my case, Melissa Ramirez, which is a case obviously I'm very familiar with, some people believe she was shot in the head, and some people believe the number that she is on the autopsy report, which is, we'll say 15. We'll just use that number. If that's accurate or not, as to whether or not that was the actual cause of death, okay, or was she actually shot in the head? Well, I tend to go the opposite route, and I believe that the autopsy is fairly accurate. But at the same time, some people didn't get internal exams. That's pretty much normal. Now, so what we need to do is have one really, really darn good pathologist come in and tell us why this stuff would be an issue. So we're going to get you an interview with somebody that's pretty famous.
And why don't we have the ballistics report from FBI?
Well, part of the reason is their answer to me was, without going through the FOIA request, just talking to somebody that was there, is that the information that they're going to put out, they're going to put it all out in the vault. Okay, the FBI has a portion of their website that's dedicated to putting out information like this that's just an enormous amount of information rather than piecing it out. So I asked this person, I said, okay, so you're waiting to put this very detrimental information out and you're going to put it in the vault, but didn't you already give it to the LVMPD? And if you did already give it to the LVMPD, weren't you already court-ordered to give us this information so that we can put closure to these people's minds thinking that we have another shooter? Because I can't sit here in front of you, Jim, right now and say that Stephen Paddock was a shooter. The reason why I can't say it is because I have no ballistics that put the weapon in his hand. Okay.
Has anyone flat out said that ballistics has been done and it confirms that all of the bullets came from his weapons?
It's very difficult for me to separate what's been said officially and what's been said to me unofficially. And so I have to actually, a lot of people think, Turber, you're just like the world's slowest computer and you're trying to think back.
Let's say it in reverse. Has anybody ever said that, oh my gosh, we've got some unexplained bullets here?
Yes. And no one said that. But people outside of the investigation have said that, of course.
Right. People believe there was additional shooters, et cetera.
Shooters, helicopters, aliens, whatever.
Whether it's official or unofficial, you haven't heard any reports that, in fact, there were unexplained bullets.
No. I haven't heard that specifically, but I don't have the information in front of me to be able to state.
But we're going to get it eventually. You're saying the FBI is going to release it on their website.
I hope so. And if they release it on the website, here's the problem. Let's reverse this back a little bit. Jim, is it of your belief that not getting this information, the ballistic report, that they were ordered to give that information out because LVMPD obviously has it? Aren't we supposed to have it?
Yeah. Well, that emanated from the FBI originally, though. So you'd have to go back and look at that original FOIA that went through the court system.
Actually, you have to look at the original court order. Did the court order just the LVMPD to release all this information, or did they also order the Federal Bureau of Investigation. Now, my understanding is that all of the reports were done within 30 to 45 days by the FBI. They were done. Like within 60 days, they were pretty much guaranteed done. So that means that even before the Las Vegas Review-Journal went out and sued for all this information, that means the LVMPD did have the information. LVMPD was definitely sued to give out all of the information that it had on the case. We don't have another perpetrator out there running around that we're trying to, hold the information because we have some lawsuit coming up. We don't have a live suspect. The person is dead. So we're not waiting for trial, and we need this information kind of hidden from the public view because it might taint the jury pool. We don't have any of this. So why are they holding it? They're in contempt, period. I mean, I can't see any other way to look at it.
Yeah,
I'm not a lawyer, but I play one on TV.
The FBI draws this conclusion that there wasn't terrorism, even though ISIS claimed responsibility. I would have thought that they would want to release information that proved that ISIS falsely claimed responsibility here.
Bingo.
Last question. Papa, we asked him this, and he thinks that Paddock was the lone shooter. I assume that's your conclusion also at this point.
I believe that all of the shots that were fired that day into the crowd, there were two shooters. Absolutely, there were two shooters in that room.
You're kidding.
No, there were two shooters. Huh? Absolutely, there were two shooters in the room. One was Stephen Paddock, as far as my opinion is concerned. The other was Sean O'Donnell, the officer that had the negligent discharge. Gotcha.
That's like an inside Vegas shooting joke.
Yeah, that's bad. Yeah. But the situation is this. I have no evidence that I got you. Man, I had you on the edge of your seat. He literally was on the edge of his seat. You were too. But the thing is this, is that I have zero evidence. And who am I, right? Who am I to be sitting here making this statement? Well, I'm a person that's basically dedicated a lot of his life to it. And I don't make any money from this. I've lost tons of money from this. And on top of all of that, I've sat there and I've listened to absolutely every single bullet and tried to determine the trajectory of every single bullet, where it went, what it hit, who it hit, all of these different things. And so out of all of that, I have to sit there and determine where the bullet came from. I know where every single bullet came from. No bullet that I was able to have any audio on, and I'm looking you right in your eye and I'm telling you this just like I tell anybody else. No bullet came from any other location other than within 50 feet or 23 feet, which is my error of margin of that room. Wow. So there had to be, if there was a helicopter, then the helicopter had to be hovering right by the room. And no one's seen it.
And the reason, you had just fog of war, general mayhem, and you had a lot of echoing of sounds, and that's why people who were at the festival were so convinced that it was multiple shooters and from all over the place.
Yeah,
right?
You have that. You have the sonic cracks. Plus, you have sounds that you had in the other hotels. So the sonic
you had an amplified audio system still turned on.
Yeah, you had that, and that's something I actually looked at early on, very early on, because I was thinking, okay, this amplified system's still on. The guy that runs that board, his name, I won't give his name, but it starts with the letter K. He turned the board off? The board was shot.
Really?
The board was shot. There's a picture of that soundboard of it being shot. Now I cannot sit here and say that I could. Now I can differentiate whether or not the sound came from LRADs, because a lot of one of the current theories is that LRADs was out there, which is your extremely loud speaker that people use for crowd control in the time of war as well. But that wasn't used. So if I could rule out that, I should be able to rule out the speakers. So what you do is you bring in a very sophisticated audio program, one of which I was using at the time, and I can't show the public, so I have to bring it into an Adobe product and show it, where you actually start putting different sound sources into the area, and then you play the sounds through a virtual area and see if they match what you actually hear, and they don't match. So what does match is all of the sounds being emanated from the 32nd floor or thereabouts. And that's it. I don't have any evidence points me any other way. And there's been plenty of time for plenty of audio experts out there to debunk me or to debunk anyone else that said any different. And no one has come through with any clear, concise evidence that has said anything different.
Okay, let's make this the last question. I keep thinking of one more. Live Nation, do you think, I think you believe that Mandalay Bay acted grossly negligent and should pay up. Live Nation, do you think they should be held responsible?
Well, here's the way this works. When you buy a ticket, to go to a concert, and Live Nation was one of the first people that Attorney Catherine Lombardo actually sued or put on the lawsuit. So you had Live Nation, and they're the ticket resource for this. And they're also the source for me for the number of people that were there. But
co-promoter
of the event. So, and MGM is the one who signed the permit to get the event. So MGM signed that permit when it shouldn't have been them. That's another story. But you have Live Nation who collects tickets. Now, when you sell a ticket to an event, how much money from that ticket goes in towards the actual ticket, paying the promoters, paying the artists and what have you, and then a certain portion of that goes into some form of liability insurance. Mm-hmm. So yes, they absolutely should have been part of this suit. Now, whether or not CSC, which is your security,
they're only responsible. They have to been responsible in some way. They have to have acted negligently in some way. So that's really the question. They're not responsible simply because they're the promoter.
Yeah, they just did that. But
so because the reason I thought of the question is you mentioned the soundboard. One of the things I was mentioning is that there should be some emergency system in place that if some emergency happens, there's another mic or there's a way to communicate with the crowd. There was zero communication. Jason Aldean runs off the stage, and that's the end of the communication. There's nobody that was telling the crowd to do it.
I have been watching my videos. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, actually, early on, that was one of the first things I said was that, number one, they should have had a system in place that automatically takes over in case something happens. It's like, boom, there's a big red button sitting on top of that soundboard, and in case of emergency, who knows, a building collapse, a plane crash, they're right by the airport.
Yeah.
If a plane crashes right there, that's going to be a huge distraction. No one's going to know what to do. You're not going to verbally get on a microphone and say, okay, everyone remain calm. Who the hell's going to remain calm? You got tanks exploding. You got someone shooting over here. You got planes crashing over here. All these different things that could be played out in this event. Hit the red button. In the case of emergency, hit this red button, and an automated message comes over the system and tells people where to go. Now, that's assuming that all the gates remain the same and all these other things. And you remember those little metal things that they had out there? They were trying to corral people into certain locations, like I think the cow herders or whatever you call them. And they try to get people to go certain directions. But in the case of an emergency, no one that is listening to this right now can say that they do not know what to do when they get on a plane.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, the other thing I would add is that you're Live Nation, you're promoting this event, and you're out there setting everything up, and you're looking around, thinking about security, thinking about wanding people as they come in, etc. But how much thought was given to that? Well, guys, look at the surroundings here. Look at all these elevated positions of people that could, so just like I think the police should have thought about that and Mandalay Bay should have thought about that, I think Live Nation arguably should have thought about that.
Well, they should have someone like me that is an expert in that area. That's an expert. We'll just say that anytime I use the term expert, people immediately start attacking me. So let's just say that I'm fairly versed in several areas, one of which would be to go into a venue and look around and go, okay, you guys got all of these buildings around here, just like you alluded to. That's an elevated position. That's a problem. We need to have someone that's watching these positions, okay? Anytime you have an event that's over a certain amount. Now, Nevada has classifications for events that are over 10,000 or over X amount of people that they should have certain security protocol in place. Did they? It doesn't seem like it. Mm-hmm. So if you have that, so you bring in some new measures. So this event actually broke the mold. There's nothing else like it to compare to. So you sit there and you go, okay, let's be proactive here. Let's hire some people. I will do it for free. I will go out there and absolutely for free. I'll work for months if necessary to go over a certain protocol that needs to be put into place anytime a situation like this occurs. No charge. Look at elevated positions. You look at crowd dispersal and crowd control. Okay, whenever an event happens, you've got people running everywhere. So now guess what? Your security is inside that crowd. They're running everywhere. You should have security in elevated positions that are watching the crowd and basically guiding people on where to go. Flashlights. You need to have lights. You need to have flashlights that security has that people recognize immediately. That's security. Let's go over there. Yellow, orange, whatever. So everybody knows this. And over time, you're conditioned to this. Okay? All these different things need to be put into place. Our loudspeaker system obviously would be clear that we come on and address telling people where to go. Now, here's the problem with that. In a pre-recorded message, And if a shooter knows that, hey, this pre-recorded message is going to come on and it's going to say for people to go this direction, well, I got a surprise for them because it's already going to tell them to go this direction. So I'm going to put bombs there with remote controls, and I'm not putting any thing out there.
Well, instead of pre-recorded,
no, it would be
a guy in a live. You could have a guy in a live mic at an alternate location.
That's what I would recommend. Someone that's actually able to view the situation, that is truly an expert, that understands how the crowds work and what's going to happen, and can actually identify new situations as they occur. You're not going to have some artificial intelligence program out there with a camera that's going to be able to do all this stuff. So you need to have a person on the mic that says, hey, okay, well, we've got something going on here. So, everyone head this direction. And you need to have signs that are elevated that clearly indicate an exit and the number. Okay? Everyone head to exit 5. So you can look up and see it. The exits were on the fence line, which is basically at the same level of our head. So as you're moving around, you're not going to see that from a distance. So these are all different things that I would be more than happy to go into with. Obviously this show is not the time to do it, but to go into and put those systems into play and put some ballot thing.
A lot of venues need that.
Bingo.